What's up, guys? We're back. This is The Real Deal with Casey and Jason, and today we have a special guest in the studio. We have the one and only Chris from Middletown.
Chris from Middletown.
So if you guys are familiar at all with WIP Sports Talk, Philadelphia Sports Talk, we have Chris from Middletown in the room. What's up, Chris?
Good morning, guys. Good morning. Glad to be here. A little different being on this side of the mic as opposed to being a caller and messing with my favorite Joe DeCamera, also known as the famous Muppet Weasel.
Muppet Weasel. We were just cracking up because we had another friend of ours here as we were getting this started, and we didn't really introduce them. But yeah, Chris calls into WIP. We're all Philly sports fans, so huge Eagles fans. We got Eagles paraphernalia on left and right.
It's as Chris put it so perfectly, it's Playoff Friday.
It is Playoff Friday.
Playoff Friday.
Flannel Friday, Playoff Friday, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, exciting. They play Saturday night.
Yeah, 8:15.
Sweet. And I will be, so 8:15 night game. And then Sunday I'll be up there for the Flyers game.
Yeah.
So that'll be cool.
Yeah, and so I listen to WIP a lot. My buddy Steve listens a lot. I've known Chris. I had no idea. Maybe I knew, but I forgot that Chris was Chris from Middletown. So I think that's just another layer of a cool thing.
It's awesome.
I dig that. I mean, because I've tried to call into WIP once, and I think I talked to Paul Jolovitz. This was years ago. And I was terrified, and I was on hold for an hour. But to be a regular caller that's a commitment.
Yeah, and it definitely the first few phone calls. I'd get on the air and it felt like, oh man, dude, it felt like a pack of elephants sitting on my chest. You're trying to breathe and and then I would go back and I listen on the Odyssey app, so I'd go back and replay my call, and I'd be like, oh my god, that was terrible, And then there's still some of those calls where we're like, that didn't really flow well. And then there's others that go really well. And I listen back and, I try to, everybody kind of builds something about it unique with them. Mm-hmm. So I did various different things. And then my intro became the unique thing to me. So
hit us with it.
Yeah. So, Joe will say, hey, we're going to Chris in Middletown. And I always start with John Ritchie goes, hey, Chris. And I go, James. And he goes, James will respond, what's up, Chris? And then I go, Muppet Weasel.
It's like your calling card. I love it.
And I was just texting my buddy Steve, who's a bigger WIP fan than I am. He listens far more often than I do. And I said, dude, you'll never believe this. Chris, our buddy Chris.
You're not going to believe who we have in studio.
Yeah, it's Chris from Middletown. And he was like, does he call DeCamera Muppet Weasel? So you've created that, whatever you want to call it, that kind of feeling or, something to remember. And he remembered it right away.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So cool. So Chris invited me up to you won tickets through WIP.
Yeah.
Invited me up to a Phillies game. And it's funny because all the guys up there, right? That John and
James
and DeCamera were all there. So and Chris walks up. He's like, and I think they knew right away. They somehow recognized you.
Well, DeCamera came over to us and introduced himself.
All right, was like, hey,
hey, I'm Joe DeCamera. And when he reached out to shake my hand, I grabbed it and I pulled him in and I go, you Muppet Weasel. And he goes, I won't curse because I don't know if you guys do that on the show or not, but he was like, you mother effer. And he started laughing. And it was really cool.
That's cool, man.
Context too, Joe DeCamera's not a big guy.
No.
And Chris just about ripped his arm out of his socket when he pulled him in. And Chris is like, the guy probably was a little fearful when you reached in and grabbed him.
The really interesting thing though, that was breaking news when we were there was DeCamera's famous girlfriend Amy from Villanova.
Oh, that was then.
And that was the first time that she ever made a public appearance with them. Oh. And he said, "Oh, this is my girlfriend Amy." And I turned and I looked at her and I said, "You are real."
Amy from Villanova, right?
Yeah, everyone there was talking about it the whole night. Yeah. John Ritchie and everybody was like, dude, I can't believe Amy showed up. Yeah, none of them thought she was real. I'm out of the loop with the WIP and I was like, they were really talking about it all night. They couldn't believe it.
Casey and I were talking to Richie, and we asked him. We were like, "Oh, did you know she was coming?" And he's like, "No, I had no idea." And it was the first time that he ever met her.
I think that's hilarious. Cool. Because I've just heard the backstory of Amy from Villanova, and as a caller, as a listener, just knowing who Joe is, I was absolutely skeptical that she was real. But that's cool.
Yeah.
You know she's real.
Yeah.
We did that. Yeah,
That's
that
cool.
day.
Another cool thing, probably the coolest thing about that night, I'm like looking through the concourse. They had a little thing set up by Bull's Barbecue. And looking through the concourse towards home plate, here comes this guy, and I'm like, it took me a split second. I'm like, this guy looks really familiar. Who is this guy? An older guy wearing like this Hawaiian shirt.
Charlie Manuel
Comes walking
That's
up to
cool,
us,
man.
right up to us, shakes our hand.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, dude, he's the best.
He was
Best guy.
just chilling.
So he was just there at the game, and then I guess the people at WIP realized he was there, and they were like, hey, we're doing this thing. We had people that won tickets come over and introduce yourself. So he stood there and talked to us, took pictures with everyone. I thought that was awesome. But
Yeah,
That's cool.
Charlie is the man.
Yeah, DeCamera did a little like question and answer, kind of like little Q&A session where he threw out a question, and then when somebody answered it, they gave him a T-shirt or a little prize, and it was all related to Charlie or Charlie's teams that he coached, and it was really neat. The really cool thing was, obviously I ended up getting a picture taken with him, and he did photos of all that, and I said to Casey, I said, when are you get a picture taken? Because Casey was just telling me how like Charlie is like his all-time favorite coach, Philadelphia Eagles coach, or Phillies coach. And he was like, no, that's cool.
Yeah,
I got your
like,
picture.
guy.
I don't really, I'm not a picture guy. And I was like, dude, it's one of your like,
This is your moment.
like, dude, get out there. So I was really glad that you ended up taking that picture.
Yeah, I got one now, and
That's cool.
yeah, it was cool. It's a good memory there. So I appreciate you having me to the game. That was awesome. So we're gonna get into something today. Now that we're done with the intros. Well, Chris, do you want to introduce yourself real quick and just kind of maybe how we met, how we came to be friends?
Yeah.
Man, we go back a little ways.
Anything you want to throw out?
Yeah. So I met Casey probably, I don't know, but when you first got in the mortgage business.
Like 2010 it would have been.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a little over 10 years ago. And I'm an insurance agent. I started in the insurance industry 20 years ago. And a lot of the ways that I would get business would be cold calling mortgage loan officers and saying, hey, when your clients are buying a house, you can refer to me. I'll help them out with the homeowners, and then help them with their car insurance and so forth. And I ended up building a relationship with the guys at Universal, and that's how I met Casey. And then just went from there and got to know each other more and more throughout the years. And to now he's probably, I consider him a really good friend.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And so you wrote our insurance for us back in 2010 when I was just getting done, just starting in the working world. Wrote our insurance. So then we've had, that customer and agent relationship, and then obviously doing mortgages. I always pass people along, and I'm like, call Chris. He's a lot like me. He's going to explain everything. He is not going to pressure you into buying something. That's not how he works. He just explains things like I do. And then if you have a better situation elsewhere, he'll be the first to tell you. And, but if not, just a great person to work with. So appreciate you there. You heard our first episode.
I did.
Where we kind of we worked our way through some of the topics that we wanted to touch on. Because again, me and Jason have had a lot of conversations. We want to kind of hit on some of these things that we've talked about in the past. And more recently, I've had conversations with Jason, Chris, and other people about the old hooch. The alcohol.
I was going to say, what does that mean?
The suds. the booze. The devil's lubricant, my dad used to call it.
I like that.
Whatever other nickname you want to have for it. But one of the things that we talked about or mentioned that we are going to talk about was alcohol. And, this is going to be a good conversation because we're kind of at three different places in our lives with that. I'll start by sharing that I haven't had a drink this year, which we are now at January 20th.
That's big, man.
So I'm almost, let me think, New Year's Day. I don't think I had anything New Year's Day. I might have had a mimosa at brunch, but beyond that, haven't had a drink this year. Jason, you want to share how far along you are with?
Yeah, I've been sober for 10 months, a little bit more than 10 months.
So almost a year.
Yeah, coming up on a year in March.
And Chris?
Yes, June 29, 2020.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, March 11th, 2022.
Yeah. So this, and to me is so, like I said, I've had more conversations recently about really not drinking, but not drinking.
Yeah.
Not about alcohol and beer and whatever, but about not drinking. So kind of cool that Chris reached out and was like, hey, I'd be happy to come on and talk about that. Again, our whole aim with this podcast is reaching out to someone. Maybe somebody hears this that's like, Man, I've thought about that, but I don't really know anybody that doesn't drink. I don't know what I would do. Or I just have questions about it. What's the feeling going into it? What are the reasons people stop drinking? All that stuff. So we can get into that and just have a conversation. I guess from my perspective, again, I'm kind of non-committal on saying I'm never going to drink again.
And that's all right. That's okay.
Yeah, it's been like 3 weeks. I'm I enjoy having whatever, beer, whiskey. I think we all have at some point. But what's that, from my perspective, and again, maybe other people out there that are on their New Year's resolution and they haven't drank in 3 weeks, but they're like, I don't know if this is going to be a whole thing, maybe just a month of, dry January.
Yeah, right. That's a thing.
What is do you guys have a moment where it was like, it kind of clicked? Like, you both know the date, which it's an important thing, right? But do you have a moment, I'm curious, where it kind of clicked and you were like, yeah, I just don't need it anymore. It's just not something I'm going to do.
Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah. So for me, I never struggled with alcohol my entire life. Went through college, drank excessive amounts in college, but the typical binge drinking weekend, graduated from college, start working, would go months without drinking, and then, sometimes would hang out with friends or whatever. And it never was something that had a hold of me. I hit a point of my life where we went through some very, very difficult family times, and it became my crutch. It became my outlet to unplug and unwind and de-stress.
Right.
And the problem was, it went from being, hey, we used to get together with the friends on a weekend or neighbors on a Saturday, to 7 nights a week I was hammered drunk.
Wow.
I blacked out probably from drinking maybe 5 times my entire life up until that point, because I was just, and I used to laugh at that. I was friends in college, like, how do you black out? Like, what's wrong with you people? Like, I never do that. To the point where I was blackout drunk like 6 nights a week, if not 7. I wouldn't stop drinking until I either ran out or passed out.
Yeah.
And it just was completely out of control. Things changed in our life that a lot of the things we were dealing with had evolved to a point where it wasn't present anymore. And I couldn't wrap my head around, like, well, why am I still stuck in this rut, this habit? And I just couldn't quite put my finger on it. I knew I wanted to, and I knew it was a problem. But I was still a really productive guy. I still, I left. So my insurance career, I started at Liberty Mutual. When I first got in the industry 20 years ago, I worked there for 15 years, and I left and opened my own independent agency where I'm now what people perceive as a broker. So I was already doing that about 2.5 years. I'm like, I'm a small business owner, I'm having a lot of success. I'm doing really well. Like, so I knew I had an issue, but like, you play games with yourself mentally to like convince yourself you're okay.
Oh, sure.
And it's normal, right?
Yeah.
To a point, the use of alcohol it's so
acceptable.
Yeah, it's so mainstream and so it's the only thing. I keep seeing this meme that pops up that's like, alcohol is the only drug that you have to explain why you don't use it.
Yeah,
in a social setting, it's like, you aren't having one, or what can I get you to drink? It's just very.
And I think there's so much tied to it, especially as guys, right? And we're kind of, all three of us are alpha competitive guys, that in our world and our circle and even our mental makeup, it's just such a masculine thing, drink beers, we throw, and it's always, I can outdrink you, and that's like, as much of I'm stronger than you type of an image. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, it took a lot to wrap around it. And I don't know, I finally evolved to a point, and Casey and I have talked about this, people often ask me like, well, how did you do it? What was it? Like, what happened? And I'm like, nothing major. Like, my wife was away one weekend with the kids. She came back home on a Sunday night. She went up to visit her parents. We hung out. I got drunk as usual. Woke up Monday morning, and my office in my house is in a spare bedroom upstairs. And I'm walking over to the room, and I'm talking to my wife. I'm getting ready to start working in the morning. And she goes, oh my God. She's like, your nose looks horrible. You have that like really bad alcoholic looking nose. Like, go look at it in the mirror. And I was standing right next to our kids' bathroom as I'm walking down the hallway. And I was terrified. I didn't want to look because I didn't want to see it. And I walked in the office. I have a friend of mine that struggled. he really struggled mightily with alcohol. Lost his family over it, lost his business over it. And he's 5 years older than me. I called him up and I said, Joe, I'm ready. And he said, what are you ready for? I said, I'm ready to climb out of this bottle. He was like, all right, let's get working on this. And that was it.
Man.
And I haven't looked back since.
Nah.
So there was a moment there, and that's, from the different conversations I've had and different friends of mine that there was a moment, and you can kind of clearly remember it, whether it's, thank God not hitting rock bottom, but there is a kind of a defining moment where you're like, all right, I'm ready, and you made that step. So, and I just wanted for everyone out there, this is nothing that we're talking about is coming from a place of, what you should do or that we're in any way better than anybody else. We are not the type of people that are judgmental. If you do whatever you do, it's not a problem. We don't judge that. This is really just more for, thank you, Chris, for sharing, because this is, this stuff is, sometimes it's tied to other stuff that's very sensitive, right? So I appreciate you sharing that. But really just out there for the person that maybe somebody is struggling with something and they're like, maybe there is another way to go about it. What's the experience of other people that are in your world and your circle? So
yeah. Just
to kind of lay that out there.
Real quick, and I think one of the issues that I struggled with it, and if we're trying to, obviously this is the purpose, this is to share what's going on so people don't feel alone. I had such a terrible fear that I wasn't going to be able to have fun without alcohol.
Yeah,
I wasn't going to be able to hang out with my friends and have a good time.
People were going to think about you differently.
Yeah,
didn't want to invite you places. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and that was a real fear of mine. I remember looking at my marriage, and my wife and I have been married 21 years. It'll be 22 years this summer. And, I remember looking at our marriage and being like, well, it's not really fun anymore. We don't really laugh as much as we used to and stuff. And I guess that's just the way it is. You get older. It's just normal. This is how it is.
Yeah, kind of settle in.
Yeah, so even with our marriage, like I felt like I needed to be drinking to have a good time with my wife because that was the only way it was ever going to happen. And I truthfully was afraid. Like I could not imagine my life being fun without alcohol. But the crazy part is it was exactly a week from the day I stopped drinking was our wedding anniversary. And we went over to Schaefer's Canal House. So plug to them.
Shout out Schaefer's.
And we're sitting outside and we're just talking, and we were carrying on a conversation. We were just laughing and having a good time. Mm-hmm. And my wife was like, oh my God, I miss this so much. And she's like, I'm so proud of you that you haven't had a drink in a week.
Wow.
And she goes, I miss you. And I hope you continue with this because I love having you back.
Man.
And it's just,
cool.
Yeah.
It just made it all, that was it. I mean,
and that's the thing that fear I had. And now it's like, yeah, I actually have just as much of a good time, but crazy if not a better time because I'm not hungover. I'm not regretting anything I said or did because I, had a little, a little bit too much to drink. And so, yeah.
That's awesome, man.
What about you, Jace? Like, if you don't mind sharing, so that day, was there something that happened that day or something that kind of, marked that journey of like, I'm done and I'm making that decision or commitment?
Well,
or was it not really even a commitment at that point and you just kind of?
Yeah, I mean, like, I had decided many times before that I was done. Like this was just another time, right? I'm sure both you guys have been through that. I usually when I said I was going to stop, it was 3 or 4 months here, 3 or 4 months there, and I don't think I had ever gone all in. And so the main reason that I decided to put it off for good was that I had found that I was doing a lot of those things, saying things that would hurt people, doing things that would hurt people, mm-hmm. and a lot of the relationships that I wanted to keep close to me were breaking, and that was kind of where I realized that those things are happening because I'm being irresponsible. I'm just consuming too much. And I don't know if I ever had a problem with alcohol and still don't. I mean, when I look back, I guess it's pretty clear that I did. I would start drinking fairly early in the day, every day. And not a lot. Like I don't think I was ever like completely blackout drunk or anything like that, but I used it as like, this is what I need to get through my day because I got to get out of my own head.
Yep.
And so it was, something I did early in the morning just to kind of get to a spot where like I could make it through the day. But it only took 1 or 2 drinks. And then a few hours later, it was down. Like I was doing things I shouldn't be doing. And it was just kind of a look at yourself in the mirror kind of moment. Like, who's the person that you want to be? And what's holding you back from that? And that was just one of the things that was holding me back from that, right? I think the alcohol was just kind of like a cover up for some things that I had to deal with myself and between my own ears. But just kind of, we talked about it the other day. It was like doing the same things over and over and over and expecting, this time I'll get through this relationship, or like it'll reach a point where it'll all be okay. And it just wasn't going to happen if I was, continuing to drink.
Yep. So one thing, when you quit on March 11th, were you like, hey, I just want to go a couple months without it and then we'll see what happens? And then you decided like from there, like, I'm just not going to do it anymore?
No, that was the last straw for me. Like,
you committed at that point.
Yeah, the next day. March 11th was the last day that I consumed alcohol. So I guess March 12th is the first day that I didn't. But yeah, it was like there was a family event that weekend. And I had drank really heavy the night before. And like, I hate feeling bad, period, right? We're all pretty well into fitness. Yeah. And not feeling good to me, it just makes no sense. Yeah. Like to not have your body feel as close to 100% as possible doesn't make sense. Yeah. But I was actively doing something that counteracted that thought process, which was drinking. And so that night I drank a ton and woke up the next morning and I was pretty much done for the weekend. And there was a very special family event that weekend that I was at, but I was a zombie.
You wasn't,
I wasn't there. I was hungover. I was a mess. And it was just like, dude, I was in front of like all my loved ones. And I was like, what do these people think of me right now? What do I think of me right now? And it was just a problem. And so it was pretty cut and dry. Like, dude, do this, point. or some really bad stuff's gonna happen.
That's where you could see like what. And I finally, I guess, in a way, understood what when she said it, I couldn't put my finger on it, but when she said, "It's so nice having you back," because you're always living in a fog. You're always living in a haze. You're either drunk or recovering from being drunk.
Or looking forward to the next time.
Right. That takes as much brain space as anything, honestly, is like that thought forward of.
So you're never present. Yeah. So the people that you're sharing your time and life with, you're never present.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what if somebody's coming from a perspective, right? Somebody's listening and they're like, man, that's like, they kind of hit that point where they were saying things they didn't really want to say or doing things they didn't want to do. But I'm not really like that. Like I drink. I don't really do any of that stuff. I just enjoy drinking or, maybe sometimes, but it's occasionally that I'll have too much and do something stupid. But what would you say to that person? Like whether you do something like that or not, that you're not proud of or that you really want to get away from, like what, is there still a benefit to not drinking if you don't ever get to that point?
Yeah, to me, I would say the same thing about a guy that, say, is relatively healthy, eats well, doesn't have high blood pressure, cholesterol, doesn't have health issues, and, is a pretty lean individual or healthy individual. It's the same point of, well, then why would they go to the gym and work out? And it's just because it can be better. And that's what I would say. Like, just because it's not a problem doesn't mean it can't be better. Yeah. And I just, and I feel the same way. And I'm glad you said this, Casey. Like I have friends that I'll go hang out at their house and they'll drink. I just don't drink. Yeah. And they know I don't judge them. I don't look at them any differently. It was a personal choice for me and for my life. That's just the way I think I need to live it. And the best version of me I get without it. Yeah. So that's kind of my thought with it, it's like, but life can be better and you can feel a different way. So that would be the reason behind it.
We touched on that in our last episode about mindset, is that the first thing that you have to acquire is the awareness. And if you're not aware that you need a better mindset. If you're not aware that it exists, a better state of yourself, a better state of being exists without it, then you would have no reason to. But that's the number one step, is awareness.
Yeah, I think you got to do it for yourself. And for me, it was also really important that I did it for my loved ones, because they deserve better too.
Yeah.
I don't like hurting people, and that's what I was doing a lot. But I think just being the best version of yourself is a really good. I mean, it's like people ask, same thing. Why do you go to the gym? Like, I'm not lifting for anything in particular.
Right.
I mean, we talk, and I do like the thought of like being able to like race some of my football athletes and things like that. That stuff's fun. But like, I'd like to live till I'm 120. I know that sounds crazy, but that would be cool. Like, I want to be the healthiest version of myself and the best version of myself. And that, for me, that just doesn't include alcohol. For some people it might. And that's that's okay.
Yeah.
I had a problem with it. I wasn't the best version of me with it. And so I needed to change.
Yeah. And I just talked to Chris about this the other day, and something we've talked about as a theme already is becoming the best version of yourself. And that's where I am with it. I've done 75 hard twice now, which is 75 days straight of no alcohol. So I know the feeling of not drinking for a good couple months at a time. And I always, during that program, especially towards the end of it, I'm like, dude, mentally, you're like, this is the best version I can be. Like, I am freaking locked in on all this stuff. And then what's happened the last couple times is like, all right, then you start weaning off of the program a little bit. Like, you start cheating a little bit with your diet and not tracking macros, and you start not doing your second workout, or start mixing in a drink, and then you work your way out of that optimal state.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to call it. It's almost like a flow state where you're just like, your mind is so open, it's receptive, you're thinking sharp, you're clear. And so doing that a couple times, and then getting, again, kind of weaning back onto all these things, I'm like, man, I want to get back to that version, but I would like to keep that version of me going. I don't want to like do it for 75 days and then work my way out of it. I just want to be that. Yeah. I want to completely just be that person going forward. So that's my motivation right now for not drinking, is I want to get that state of mind back.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, Chris, but like for me, it was also really important that the people that were closest to me supported it. And not like supported it as in like anything crazy, but they didn't make me feel bad for not doing it, I guess. Like all of my buddies, like I used to go out and drink with them all the time at the bar and whatnot. I still see them. I still hang out with them. I might not do those things with them anymore, but we find other things to do. And if I go out, or if we go to somebody's house and people are drinking, it's not a problem for me.
Yeah.
But it does make things better when they're accepting of, and they don't push anything on you or whatsoever.
Yeah.
So having that community is important.
And I think like one thing that you said that mattered a lot for me was, and again, I talked about this, and I think we do it with all aspects of our life, whatever we're struggling with. And a struggle I'm still fighting with is food. So now I have to work on that. And, I put on 30 pounds and I never lost it. So, but I remember talking to my son, who's now 17. So this is about 2 years before I stopped. So he's about 13 years old. And I remember thinking, he's got to see me and know that his dad's an alcoholic, because he's got to know, this isn't normal. You hear in school, they talk about alcoholism and the kids hear about it, like he's got to know, like, yeah, that's my dad. That's what he does every night. And then one day I start talking to him, and I said, yeah, I'm sure you probably realize, like, I drink entirely too much. And he stopped and looked at me, and he was like, what? No. He's like, I don't think that at all. And he was being very genuine and sincere. And I played a game in my head. I thought, oh, see, Chris, you're in your own head.
It's not as bad as you think.
Yeah, you're just making a mountain out of a molehill. You're fine. You're under control. You're being dramatic. But the reality was, his normal was seeing me that way, so he didn't know any different. He thought it was normal behavior, and that stuck in my head. And I was like, man, I don't want my son to think that this is normal. I don't want him to realize, like, hey, if I'm having stress in my life, I could just abuse my body. I could do drugs or alcohol or whatever it is, insert whatever that abundance that doesn't belong is there. And it really sat with me the wrong way. And now my daughter, my youngest, is 8, so she's known me since she was 5.5 as sober dad. So she never really knows that guy. And that means a lot to me, that's the image I want her to see, because when she gets older and starts to date and form relationships, I want her to see that and not somebody who gets plastered drunk every night and that's normal.
Right. Absolutely.
What are some of the things, Jason, you touched on some of these things, like why you were non-committal before? Like you said, one of the things was you're not scared. You're worried about maybe what other people would think, or that you would lose some relationships with maybe your friends, that's what your gatherings usually revolved around. Cause I could definitely speak to that too. But like, what are some of the things that I would be interested to hear from each of you that you were like, man, I thought it was going to be this, and then I realized it wasn't. Like what, some of those mental things that you're thinking, I don't know. I relate this again to 75 hard, as in when I'm like looking at this, like 75 days on a diet and now no alcohol, I'm going to miss out on a wedding, or I'm going to miss out on dinner with my wife where we go out and have wine and eat like crap, or ice cream with my kids. And I'm like, I had this whole thing in my mind made up that it's like, it's going to be horrible because I'm going to miss all this stuff.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that you came across?
I was just afraid of the judgment more than anything. And I think in the last episode, I said that fear pretty much runs my life, or at least it did a lot. And now I'm trying to, let that impact me less. But that was the biggest thing. I was worried that I was going to be in so many of those situations where, it's like, oh, come on, dude. Like, and I was going to be like the odd man out in a bad way. And I was really afraid of that, like just super afraid. And I was just at those times not willing to hold strong and just be the person that I needed to be, because I was always worried about being the person that I thought someone else wanted me to be or needed me to be. And it's like, I heard it from Gary Vee a long time ago, and it just resonated with me. Nobody knows. I mean, we know a little bit about each other's lives just being in this room. And I feel like even more so about our friends and our family. But still, even those people, we only know a fraction of what their life is really like.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what's going on between my ears. Nobody knows what's going on every second of my day and what I'm going through. And so I was 100% positive that alcohol was bad for me, that it was something I needed to get rid of. But yet I was too worried about what other people, not that anybody was putting anything on me, but it was just kind of how I thought about things, that if I don't drink, they're going to judge me, and therefore I should continue drinking. When it's just, you got to know what's best for you and trust that and lean into that. That's really, eventually, I was just finally like, look, I know this for a fact for me, do it. And that was kind of just where it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, again, my biggest fear was just that I wasn't going to have fun. Life wasn't going to be enjoyable without alcohol in it. How was I going to sit down and watch a game and really enjoy it? I remember sitting down like, the Eagles are on. Turn it on and be like, oh, this is life.
This is the life.
I'm sitting here, cold beer in my hand, I'm watching the game, and I just didn't think I was going to be able to enjoy things without it, because I had to have that with me.
Well, and that's kind of what, and I don't mean to cut you off, go right back to it, but that's what we are also shown all the time.
Yeah.
Commercials, TV, that is what is put in front of us.
Yeah. You're conditioned to believe that goes together, and without it, something's missing. And and that was the amazing part, was just that aha moment. And I had that with my wife that week after, was like, wow, what I thought was just never going to happen again in our relationship, and this more lightheartedness, good fun that we used to have with just enjoying each other's company, that I thought, well, we just grew away from that. We're just older now. That's gone. No, it's still there. It just wasn't allowed to come through. So for me, that was the biggest thing. And then the byproduct, which wasn't why I did it, which was amazing though, was some of the guys that I would go to the gym and talk to, and we would all laugh and joke about getting hammered the night before and what we're going to drink that night. And, that I thought were really entrenched drinkers that I thought might view me a little different, like you were talking about, Jason. But the amazing thing is, this is why, like, I've always been in, wear my emotions on my sleeve, and, I don't hide who I am, and I was never ashamed to share, hey, I don't drink anymore, and I struggled with it, and because I just don't feel like there's anything to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is some of those people have opened up to me and are like, wow, man, yeah, I've actually really always struggled myself. Mm-hmm. And again, I never thought that they did. So the fact that maybe I can help, and that's why when I saw your podcast, and admittedly, I've only watched, I think, 3 podcasts my entire life. I'm not a
So did we make
person.
top 3?
Yeah, well, obviously, this is the first one that inspired me to do this. I've never done this before.
Appreciate that,
it's completely foreign.
Seriously,
but I messaged Casey and I was like, that is amazing because I really like it because you guys are we're just carrying a conversation that literally we were doing the same thing right before.
Yeah.
You know, so to me, to be able to share it and maybe it does help somebody in some other way is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think too, that's the awesome part about this platform that we have now that we created is that just sharing the story does a lot of times help people. And I know, Jason, you had shared that somebody reached out to you. I think you made one post about you haven't drank in 6 months or whatever it was.
So many people. Chris reached out to me. Yeah, he texted me and told me a little bit about his journey at that time. But yeah, I've had I think I posted on Facebook on my birthday, which was 3 months into it, and kind of when I'd already made the decision like that first day, but at that point I knew that I was good. Yeah, I had so many of our friends reach out that I had no idea that they were sober. And I think a part of it, and maybe they had posted stuff and I just didn't see it, but I do think that it's not something people talk about a lot, kind of because they're afraid of that judgment or afraid of, maybe they're not afraid to admit that they're sober, but maybe that means that they had a problem before, which maybe they didn't have a problem, but there is that kind of element
there is. It's a little bit like a taboo thing. Like,
if I admit that I'm sober, then I'm also kind of
wonder what happened with Jason. Did he get a DUI or did he whatever? Exactly. You know, I think there is, and I'm guilty of thinking that. Like when I see somebody, even to this day, I'm like, I wonder what happened. Like, I wonder if, their wife was going to leave them so dude, that's just like that shows you the mentality that's out there, even amongst me, who I'm surrounded by a lot of people that was not the case. Yeah. But you're right. That is out there. So maybe this will give, somebody out there, maybe it's just, dude, share your story because you don't know who it's going to connect with. I know a lot of people have reached out to you and the same with me with 75 Hard. I would post on there for accountability for myself, not because I wanted people to be like, oh, good, Casey did 75 Hard. I don't care. It was a personal thing.
That is cool though.
Thank you. Thanks, man. But I had people that, I ran into a buddy of mine that I played baseball with. Haven't seen the guy, haven't talked to the guy in probably 5 years. I'm friends with him on Facebook. Actually, it was probably more like 10 years. Haven't talked to him. Saw him on Facebook, whatever, but I saw him at a golf outing and he was like, dude, I did 75 Hard after I saw that you did it. I lost like 25 pounds. Like I stopped, I can't even drink beer anymore because after I stopped for 75 days, now I can't even, my body doesn't handle it. So he's like, that's your fault. And they're joking around with me, but it made a positive impact on his life. So I don't know. I guess want to give people a platform to, dude, talk about it, share it. This shouldn't be a taboo thing where you're ashamed to say that you don't drink anymore. That's the dumbest thing in the world. So I don't know. We could talk about it and just share your experience. Maybe it helps someone. And like I said, hopefully this connects and lands with somebody who maybe they're like, yeah, I do need to cut back. And I don't know. I feel free to reach out to us if there's anything we can do, or maybe connect you with somebody that can help you. We're not professionals in any kind of circles like that where we're trying to we're not certified to help people stop drinking. But if you have a question or you're just curious, we'd be happy to field it. I can speak for these guys.
100%.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other closing remarks on this? Anything that you think is important to share maybe in this journey, or thoughts that anyone else is having on it?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing is just take that step. If you need to do it, just do it. You had asked earlier to Jason, hey, did you think you were going to do it just as a pause or it was a forever thing? And for me, again, I was afraid to make it a forever thing because, again, that was became such a key person in my life was alcohol. And it was my friend who had gone through it, and he said, dude, you got to wrap your head around this is forever. Don't put the toe back in the water. Just once you commit. And my wife hates this about me because I'm a competitive person, but she's like, why are you so extreme? Why are you always 110%? You know, because I'm the same way with food. And Casey and I talk about this. Like, why can't you just do things in moderation? And I struggle with that. But for me, once I made that full commitment, like, okay, this is it, 100%, no looking back. It made the difference. So, you know, for some people, hey, take that step. Others just finally get there, make it a mindset. I'm doing this, and that's it, and just follow through.
And ideally, without hitting rock bottom, like,
yes.
You know, as much as it's not always the case, but in some cases, there is a place where people do hit this rock bottom. Like, don't get there. You know what I mean? You don't have to get there to make this step. It doesn't have to be like what I said earlier. Like, you don't have to get a DUI. You don't have to get in an accident. You don't have to do something really stupid that messes up the rest of your life. Don't let it get there. Yeah. Like, if you know in your heart that you want to take that step, then make a commitment and do it, and just see what happens. I'll share this too, and I think this is important for people that are just starting. Again, not coming from an expert, but just somebody who has stopped for at least a short period of time. Getting through the first weekend was brutal because I didn't drink a whole lot during the week, but you know, Friday night, Saturday, maybe Sunday, it was kind of like my weekly routine. Getting through the first weekend was tough for me. It was like the natural motion of opening the fridge out in my garage and getting a beer out of there or whatever else. Or, you know, having TV on and pouring a drink, right? That was part of my thing. So the first weekend was tough. The second weekend was just as tough. By the third weekend, I was good. I'm like, maybe it takes 21 days to break a habit, like you hear sometimes. But after 3 weeks, the weekends didn't bother me. I could work.
It's funny how you say that. So my advice too would be, as you're doing that, I drink unsweetened iced tea now, like I used to drink alcohol, and I literally laugh. My wife buys it for me all the time, or I'll be like, I gotta go get some beverages, you know. Yeah. But I'm like, I'm gonna mix a cocktail, and I put ice in the cup, and I take unsweetened iced tea. I did it with water with lemon, whatever it is. It's goofy, but like that does pacify you. So that is something that helps.
Seltzer waters we're big on. The flavored seltzers, we go through them big time. And I find that, like last night I went out on a date night with Danielle, and we went to a brewery, and I'm like, I'm not drinking. So I get a seltzer water, like club soda basically with lime. Yeah. You know, and I have that, and that's my drink, which also helps too. This is just another tip if you are just now getting into this and maybe you don't want to broadcast it out there. If you are going out in a social situation and you're not going to have anything to drink and you don't want the pressure of people saying, hey, just have one, or hey, let me get you one, order a club soda with lime, walk around with it. People don't know what's in there. And it just, if you want to avoid that conversation, maybe you're not ready for that. People won't ask if you're carrying around a club soda with lime because they think maybe whatever, you got some vodka there. Yeah. but anyway, it just does help, you know, and keeps you away from, if you're worried about the peer pressure aspect of it.
Yeah. I think anything you can do to like increase friction, like make it harder to drink. Like I couldn't have anything in my house, right? So that, like, I did it even if I knew I wasn't going to drink. I wasn't sitting at a bar anywhere with buddies or anything like that. Yep. So, you know, if it's something that you want to quit doing, then you have to put as much friction in front of that habit as possible. Yeah. And if it's something that you want to do, you got to remove as much friction as possible. Yep. Like going to the gym and things like that. So for me, it was just as simple as can't have it in the house. You know, not going to sit at a bar with any of my friends or anything like that. And I probably didn't go out, period, for a while. But all the stuff that you think to do is probably what you should do.
And basically just breaking the habit that you find yourself in. Yeah. So what makes that habit easier? What makes that habit harder? And
the other thing is, if you are trying to stop drinking and like you fall back into it, not to like crush yourself for that. Like, I know that might be like maybe not like an alpha thing to say, but like if you crush yourself for that, at least for me, that's when I would just hit it even harder. Right. I'd go in even harder. Like if you really dwell on that and beat yourself up for it, it could get worse, at least in my situation. So, you know, try to take the necessary steps to improve that decision next time, and hopefully you get to a point where, you know, you're good to go.
Yeah, and that's the other thing where the cycle continues, and I found that as well, is, all right, I'd be like, I'm not going to, two things. I'm going to try not to drink this weekend, and then if you drink Friday, you're like, screw it, I'll start next weekend, I'll drink Saturday, and then you end up, you know, in way worse shape. But the other thing is how you talk to yourself internally. and we can do a whole episode on this, but don't try to stop. If you're going to stop. Even if you just say it's going to be for, maybe you do try a week for some people. Maybe it's a day for some people. Maybe it's a month. Maybe it's 3 months, 6 months. Maybe it's this year. But when you do it, don't try to do it. And don't tell yourself, I'm trying to not drink when you go out, because then you've got this internal battle going on in your head constantly.
And that's leaving the toe in the water, like Chris said. That is huge.
And that's
if you do that, you'll go back to it.
Yep. And I'm trying not to drink. Don't try. Either just don't do it for a certain period of time. But when you talk to yourself, make sure that you are, and I say, and this has worked for me, I'm not drinking right now. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying I'm never going to drink again, but like if somebody offers me a beer, I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm not drinking right now. Mm-hmm. And that's it. I'm not doing it. I'm not trying not to do it. I'm not doing it.
Right.
So hopefully that helps someone. Guys, we appreciate, we've had so many people reach out already for this podcast, which is awesome. Again, we just started this thing to try to help one person out there. So please continue to reach out to us. Please share it. Please comment on there so we can get back to your comments. If you have any topics, questions you want us to cover on this or any other things going forward, we would love to hear from you. And I only have one final thing to say.
I hope you're going to, because I'm going to say it if you don't.
Let's go.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds. Chris from Middletown weighing in. Go Birds.
Joe to camera. You Muppet Weasel.
See you guys. We will see you next week.